Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's class. And I would implore the party chairman to please inform your party members, your colleagues about today's class, and we'll get straight into it. In the next 5 minutes, hopefully, we'll have more than enough attendance in the next 300 seconds. Yeah, thank you and see you shortly. Yeah, welcome back, guys. And we would begin the class in the next minute. And before we start, would like to introduce our facilitator for today's topic, which is the Nigerian Constitution and Citizens' Rights, and the cohort 18 of the Electoral College. And the name of our facilitator for today is Barrister Uchechi Ezinyiora, and permits me to do a quick reading of our profile. Sorry, please, can you all hear me? Signify by the raise of hands so I can proceed accordingly. Thank you. I'm waiting for one or two, so we'll proceed to reading our profile. Oh, yeah, thank you. I get that. Let's get straight at it. Yeah, Barrister Uchechi Ezinyiora. She is a legal practitioner and HR professional with a key focus on technology law and regulatory compliance. She serves as a legal consultant to the foremost inter-country adoption agency in Nigeria, Life Foundation, and Dang Lifestyle. She is the head legal consultant of Zoe Legal, a corporate, commercial, and startup legal advisory firm in Lagos State. She has worked with several local and international bodies on fintech, lifestyle, telecommunication, employment law, and immigration. In addition to her legal practice, she is very keen on public advocacy and the education of Nigerian youth on politics and governance. Barrister Ochochi is called to the Nigerian bar and has obtained an LLM in international commercial law from the University of Hertfordshire. She runs a podcast called So Legal, where she speaks on legal issues, and she's keen on using her platform to encourage awareness and education among the masses. Dear party members, ladies and gentlemen, please kindly welcome Barrister Uchechi Izinyora. Thank you so much. You're welcome, Barrister.
Hi, hello. Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Clearly, loud, clear.
You're breaking a bit.
Yes, I can hear you, and I
Oh,
think
okay,
every
okay.
other person.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for
You're
the
welcome.
introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here once again. Um, nice to meet you all. I hope you've been having an amazing time um during this cohort. So my session will be a bit more interactive. I think we have about wow, over 100 people in the room. Okay. All right. So I'll just start by sharing my screen and then we can go from there. Okay. Can you see my screen? Please confirm you can see my screen. Okay. Thank you, Farida. All right. So the topic for today is the Nigerian Constitution and citizens' rights. And so I'm just going to start first by asking the class, what comes to mind when you hear the term the Nigerian Constitution? Like what's your first thoughts when you hear Nigerian Constitution? Any answer is a good answer. Okay, Abubakar. Yeah, you can unmute and speak.
Good evening, Ma.
Good evening.
Constitution, Nigerian Constitution, when the word, I think, is actually referring to rules and regulations, customs and principles guiding the behavior, actions, and attitudes of Nigerians.
Okay. So a whole definition comes to mind. Okay. Thank you. Isaiah, how about you? What comes to mind when you hear the word Nigerian Constitution?
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
For me, I feel the Nigerian Constitution is this highest document used in directing affairs and protecting life. In fact, for me, I would say it shows the supremacy of Nigeria as a country because it shows our rights, our weaknesses, and whatever we're supposed to do and what we're not supposed to do at a particular time. That is for me.
Okay, awesome. The highest document, it shows supremacy and rights. Great points. Can we have Zachariah?
Hello, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening to everyone. It's a privilege for me being in this electoral college cohort and to the organizers of this program. To me, the definition of constitution is the supreme law that outlines the fundamental principles, structure, and powers of government, as well as guaranteeing the fundamental human rights and liberties of its citizens.
Okay, awesome. Okay, that's great. So when you hear what I'm getting from the class is that you don't get nothing negative, nothing positive. You just go straight to the definition. I'm trying to understand like your disposition towards it, not necessarily the definition. Like what's the first thing that you think of when you hear Nigerian Constitution? Is it, oh great, this book of laws that we have, or some documents that we don't really use, or something archaic, something outdated, or something used a tool of oppression? Like, I want to actually get like the first thoughts on your mind. I know that you know the definition, but I just want to understand like what's the thoughts that comes to mind when you hear Constitution. Let's have two more people. I'll go with Bolton, and then Aminat. Bolton, you can speak.
Good evening, Ma.
Good evening.
For the Nigeria Constitution, for me personally, the first that comes to mind is a book of law that is a tool in the hand of the political umpires, of which they use to their own self-interest. That's for me.
Okay, interesting. Thank you, Bolton. Aminat, please take a go.
Okay, good evening, everyone.
Good
What comes to
evening.
my mind when I hear the Nigerian Constitution is a document that needs to be reviewed, that is old, like is outdated, that does need to be reviewed. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Very, very interesting. So I see some comments on the chat. Someone said, NS says an acceptable document that guide the operational strategies of our nation. Olaiton said rules and regulations come to mind. Okay. Paul says a body of laws produced by a group of people or citizens of a country to guide their actions, behavior, and corporate governance. Ota Nelson says it's the ground norm of which all other laws derives this power. Nelson, you must be a lawyer. Ernest says it's a book Nigerians never obey. Wow. Noble says the book Nigerians never understand. Interesting. Opeyemi, the book that favors the rich. Wow. Okay. Okay. All right. So the general consensus, it's a book of laws, is the highest document, like some of you have said. And some people have said that it's a book that people don't understand. It needs to be redefined. It needs to be updated. Some people use it for corruption and injustice. A body of laws to guide the country. All right. No wrong answers, like I said. And thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. And yeah, we will be discussing some, content in the Nigerian Constitution. Be that as it may, it is definitely a body of laws, a body of rules that direct how we Nigerian citizens should be, how we should go about our affairs, how we have collectively decided to be governed, right? Just to put it in a very small nutshell. So this session, this is the goal of what we're going to cover, right? Just to put things in perspective. We're going to understand the Nigerian Constitution as the foundation of our governance as a nation. We're going to also explore the rights, the civic and political rights of us as Nigerian citizens. And we're also going to look into how we as Nigerians can go about protecting and exercising our rights, right? Sometimes these things, we think that they're given, but you realize that you may not necessarily know everything that is there to know when it comes to what your rights are as a Nigerian citizen. And I'm glad that we are all in this class together, right? Because classes like this you don't really learn things like this in secondary school or in the university. No one really, except you study government, or I don't know, you study law, or you just take it upon yourself to study constitutional law. People don't really take time to understand the basic rights, things that you are obligated to do as a Nigerian citizen, things that would actually help you in furthering your nation, help you and I in furthering our nation. And that's what we're going to just look at in summary form in this class, because obviously we can't go through every single part of the Constitution. We're just going to cover the civic and political rights, and also why political education matters, right? Obviously, like we've all agreed in this class, the Constitution shapes governance, it shapes the elections, and it also governs how you participate in making these decisions as a citizen, right? And largely, many of us are unaware of what our rights are. Not only does it lead to exploitation, but sometimes it leads to misplaced arguments, right? You find some people arguing about what the vice president should do and should not do. But meanwhile, the vice president obviously has, a limit to what he can do. People blame the state governor for what is actually the responsibility of the local government chairman. People blame the president for what is the responsibility of the legislative. So you find these types of things in common spaces like the media, social media, even interacting with your friends, people, boldly proclaim things, make statements confidently, but you find that a lot of people don't even know what the divisions are, what the rights are, what the protections are. And that's why it's important that Electoral College, does what it does and have sessions like this where we can adequately educate ourselves and learn, because the truth is, at the end of the day, this is the country that we have. So we are better off gaining more knowledge, gaining more understanding about what it is that's governing us. For instance, the Constitution, right? So we're going to go through all these things. Someone did do a good job of defining what a constitution is. Just not the Nigerian Constitution, but in general, what is a constitution? I think I'll just go in the chats again and just take one definition. And okay, so Sukomi said it's a foundational document that outlines the framework, principles, and laws of our country. Yes, that's a very good a very good definition. And then John says it is the codifying of laws that is meant to guide the people of Nigeria. Okay, so those are very good definitions. And I'll just encapsulate that by saying this. It's the supreme law that outlines the rights of citizens and government powers. It establishes how leaders are elected, how law is made, and justice is served. It's very important to point out the supremeness of the Constitution, because in law school, we were taught that all other laws that are in contradiction to the Constitution are void or voidable to the extent of that contradiction. So that's very important, because if you have like a local regulation or an act or a state government, bylaw, right, and it's in direct opposition to what is contained in the Constitution, right, that's part of that law. Obviously, when it comes to being adjudicated upon, it would obviously be a red flag. It will be voidable to the extent of that inconsistency. That's why we call it the ground norm. The ground norm is the Oga Patapata, the father of all, the daddy that daddies. That's what the Constitution is in Nigeria. So it's a respected book of law. I know that a lot of us think it's outdated, but have we even done 20% of what is contained in that book before we even say it's outdated? Have we even attempted to understand what is due to us as citizens, what our rights are? Or are we just, wallowing in ignorance, essentially, right? And people have also said that it's a body of rules that the elites use to oppress, right? But another form of oppression is keeping you away from knowledge of what is contained in the book, because, like they would say, knowledge is power. If you understand, you would make more strategic decisions, more informed and educated conversations will come out of it. So yeah, I mean, everyone's opinion is valid to the extent of the knowledge that they are aware of. But we will just go through our constitution. So our constitution, obviously, as amended, is the foundation of Nigeria's democracy. That's why you would see it say, we the people. That means that you and I, or everyone that represented us, came together and decided that this is what will govern us as a people, right? Is the foundation of our democracy. Democracy is a government for the people and by the people, right? So it means that there is no sort of dictatorial form of leadership, right? It's mostly a rule that is agreed upon by majority of the people, right? And that's how the Constitution came about. Obviously, it has gone through a lot of amendments, a lot of reviews from the period of independence up until date. And, continually there's discussions to have even more sections reviewed and all of that. But going through the structure, obviously the preamble sets out our values of unity, peace, and justice. And then there's the chapter 4, that's the fundamental human rights chapter, which is very important to us as citizens of Nigeria. And then we have the separation of powers, that's between the executive, legislative, and judiciary. And then we have electoral processes and governance. So these are the key areas that we're just going to, go through very quickly. Okay, so I want to ask this question. Why do you think that you as a citizen should pay attention to what's contained in the Constitution? Why should you care? I mean, you can go about your life without ever encountering the Constitution or even opening it, and you will be fine. But why do you think that it's important that every citizen should care about what rights accrue to them as Nigerians? No right or wrong answer once again. I just want to hear where we all are. Okay, so I'll go with Aminat. I don't know if that's a previous hand raised, but your hands are raised. Aminat.
Aminat, kindly unmute.
Okay, so Nelson on the chat said, because it affects our daily activities, actions and inactions. Very correct. Victor says, it's the duty of every citizen to know and defend her constitution. Absolutely. And Paul.
Okay, I've unmuted.
Amina, all right.
Okay, sorry,
Okay,
I'll just read those on the
Why
chat. And then,
should citizen
can you
care?
hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly, Ma.
Okay, go ahead.
Citizens should care because there's a way it affects our lives. So it's best that we care about what the Constitution is about.
How does it affect your life? In what way? I mean, you can do without ever knowing what's in the Constitution. How does it affect you? Like, since you were a child to secondary school to university, how does it affect your life? Does it affect the job that you, like whether you are accepted at a job employment or your salary? Does it affect you in that way? I mean, that's okay. Someone else can go. Let's have Ajibola.
Oh, I already asked Nelson to unmute.
Okay. Please, you can take charge of the hands raised because I can't see everyone's hands. Go ahead, Nelson.
Nelson?
Okay, so Camille on the chat says, because it protects our right and holds leaders accountable. Very good points. Holding leaders accountable. Yes. Jabez says it sets the background for civil living and chaos. Very interesting. Jabez, if you can unmute and throw more light on what you've just said, I would really appreciate it. I'd like to understand your thought process around that. Adamu says it spells out the do's and don'ts, duties and obligations. Awesome. And then Bolaji says the constitution is basically about the citizens majorly. I can see some people on the chats, their hands are raised on the screen. Please, you can unmute and speak.
Nelson is unmuted. Nelson, please, can you go ahead?
Hello?
Yes, hello, I can hear you, Nelson.
All right, thank you so very much. I'm sorry about that, my network glitch. Okay, in respect of the question asked,
I can't hear you anymore. Jabez, okay, please can Jabez speak? Since Nelson's internet is a bit off.
Jabez, right?
Yes, please.
Jabez, please kindly unmute. Yes.
Okay, yeah, good evening, everybody. Yeah, what I actually meant to say is it sets the background for civil living and prevent chaos. You know, without a set rule and regulation on how people live, you know, anarchy is inevitable. So in order to prevent chaos in a society, there is a need for the people to have a law. And how can people have a law if it's not codified, if it's not, how will I put it now? If it's not written, I'm looking for the best word to use. So the constitution is important, you know, so that you know what you need to do and what you cannot do. If you don't know what you need to do and what you cannot do, chaos is inevitable in the society. So it's important for us to know the constitution, know what we need to do, and know our responsibility, and know what our rights are. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jabez. There's a comment here from Ernest. Can you please?
Jabez, can you please mute? Okay, it's
Yeah,
out.
I was just laughing at a comment from Ernest Andoka. Your name is very reminiscent of our former Minister of Justice. Said your background is already the chaos. You need the constitution. Okay, thank you very much, Davis. That was a good one. All right. So last one, Adamu says, when you're more concerned and aware of the constitution, it becomes difficult for your fundamental rights to be stepped upon. I agree with that. Maybe not difficult, but you are more confident about asserting your rights, right? It becomes difficult for people to run over you and take you for a ride because you are aware, you know what is due to you and what isn't, right? And the truth is that on a daily, we encounter these things, we encounter these pushbacks. But if you're armed, not even just with the constitution, you know, just even civil interactions with law enforcement agencies, just letting them know, okay, look, I know what is my due, you know, obviously calmly, and then speak as someone who is informed, speak as someone who is well enlightened about, you know, your country and what accrues to you. I believe that, not even I believe, I know, because I've personally had those encounters. And, you know, just having a conversation, because most times we already assume fault for no reason. We just assume that, oh, we are automatically guilty. We are at the mercies of whoever it is, but not all the time, not true, not necessarily. Being informed would actually go a long way in helping you communicate effectively, helping you, you know, get out of things in a very legal and straightforward manner, right? Okay, so why should you care? The Constitution influences how leaders rule, elections are conducted, and how justice is served, right? a lot of times we assume that our leaders are not informed of what's, they don't understand what's going on. What they actually do, and they know, and they will be the first to follow that due process, because when it gets to court, right, they would quote that due process for you, right? So you need to understand what the handbook is, what the modus operandi is before you even start, the conversation with the elections as well. And again, even when it comes to seeking for an amendment or a review of the document, you need to understand how those processes go and take time to follow them, because we sit back and think, oh, this thing is such a huge task, it's such a big deal, but it's not always a big deal as we think, right? I've seen it done in most recent times. People have clamored and lobbied and pushed bills, and we've seen successful passage of some amendments, right? How elections are conducted and how justice is served. It's very important to arm ourselves with this information. Someone mentioned it holds leaders accountable, and I agree with that. Understanding the Constitution helps you in demanding accountability, because when you go to the Constitution, you understand that these leaders that are elected, they're actually there to serve you. They're there to promote your interests. But then we do this thing where once the officials are elected, we go home and sleep. Even if they are not from your party or your candidates, you still have a role to play. As an opposition, you still have a role to play. Yes, because they are still there to represent you. It's still your constituency, it's still your local government, it's still your state. How are the ways that you can get your voice heard? How are the legal ways? How are the corridors that you can go through to ensure that you demand accountability in the most efficient and effective and results-oriented ways? And I think the first step to that is understanding the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, right? Okay, so we're just going to go very quickly to civic and political rights, what they are. So can anyone mention what they would consider a civic and political right in Nigeria? I'm doing this because I want this to be an interactive class. Yes, to vote. Thank you. Yes. The ability to vote is your right as a citizen of Nigeria and to be voted for. Very good. Okay.
Yeah, Ajibola. I just unmuted Ajibola.
Oh,
Okay,
thank
go
you.
ahead.
Finally, I get to speak. So, I think so. There are two questions, right? You have what's
Yeah.
called the civil and political rights. So, I think
Mhm.
your political rights, in fact, I think your political right itself is more important than your civil rights, because your political right determines how you are governed. And then, if you're talking about your political rights, it encompasses your right to vote, your right to participate in political parties, your right to influence the kind of leaders that are being elected in political parties, your right to speak on political issues, and your right to reframe how politics is being done in a particular country. And I think it's, in fact, it's the most important thing, because it affects the foundation of society. Because from the political parties you get your leaders, and from your leaders you get policy, and from your policies you get the kind of country that you have. Now your civil rights. Now your civil rights, okay, for this one, I must admit I may not get it 100%, but for your civil rights, I think that has to do with the rights that govern how you live in a society. So the kind of places, and it has to do with like individual, individual activities. So working, paying of taxes, the kind of conduct you're able to make in society. And I think that your political rights are very, very important, because if you look at the history of this country, the time when people were not, when we're under military junta and we're not allowed to vote, at that time we didn't have any political rights. And if you see that we didn't make progress during that period. So I think political rights are very, very important. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ajibola. I appreciate that very extensive exposition, and I appreciate the fact that you acknowledge that there was a time when we did not have these rights, right? There's a time when we didn't even have democracy as a nation. We couldn't even have a say. So a lot of the things that we just shrug our shoulders for, people fought for it, people clamored for it, and now we have it. It's just like a time in the West where women were not able to participate in politics. Women could not vote. Women were not recognized in some parts of the world now. I mean, talk about like in Saudi Arabia, where women are even still struggling to get driving license. So these are things that not only should you celebrate, but you should actively participate in all the time. It doesn't matter if one outing does not favor you, or no, it's your perpetual right, and it's a right that you cannot exercise anywhere else. And that's why it's your right as a Nigerian citizen. If you go to Dubai, you cannot exercise that right. You can't exercise that right. It's your right as a Nigerian citizen, and no one can take it away from you as long as you qualify in terms of age, and also when it comes to you being voted for. You qualify, you've done all you need to do to participate in the process, then you should gladly and joyfully exercise that right every time you have the opportunity to. This one that we're always begging people, go and get your voter's card, go, and people are sluggishly. It is your right. There was a time when that was not existent. So it should always be something that you do joyfully whenever the opportunity calls for it, right? When it comes to, being rigged and all, those are separate conversations, but the question of should you participate, it will always be yes. It will always be yes, because that is the only legal process, according to the Nigerian Constitution, that you can effectively influence the decision of who leads you. Essentially, by you not participating, you are saying, you know what, I don't care, and whatever happens, happens. So you don't have any right to complain when it doesn't go the way you would want it to go. But that's the way. There's no other way for you to influence that decision. I mean, you can do other things, but that actively, participating in the voting process, that's being your political right, is very, very important. Civic rights, thank you for the ones you stated, but it's a lot more than that. Your civic rights extends to, your fundamental human rights as a person, as a Nigerian citizen, your right to life, right to dignity, right to freedom of movement, freedom of association, all of those things. Oh, my screen sharing pause. I don't know why it stopped. Sorry, I don't know why my screen stopped sharing. Yeah, so all of those rights are very, very important. And yes, we should always, always celebrate an opportunity to participate first and foremost. And we can then talk about, okay, whether it's going to be acknowledged, or whether, the people who do what they do will do what they do. But other than that, why is this thing doing this? I can't share my screen. Okay. All right. Anyone else have something to add to that? Joseph, please, you can unmute and speak. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yes, I can
Joseph,
hear you.
you have the floor, please.
Okay, go ahead, please, Joseph.
All right. So with regards to the difference between civic and political rights, I think civic and political rights are just stating the fundamentals, the basic rights that are really enshrined in a country's constitution. And of course, they're also part of the ingredient of democracy. And so that's why, like just like the last speaker said, that civic rights, they are rights in its own self that really promote social justice, give us a democratic process, and ensures that all of those things, there's a strict adherence to them. So right to life, right to dignity, right to personal liberty, right to fair hearing, freedom of expression, peaceful assembly and association, all of those things are encapsulated in civic rights. So with regards to political rights, we begin to talk about right to participate in governance, right to freedom of information, access to government information, and of course, the right to contest election and right to vote. So all of those things that's the difference. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well said. Yeah, so as you said, our civic rights include, our fundamental human rights as, humans in Nigeria, citizens in Nigeria, and you can find them in Section 33, Section 35 of the Constitution, Section 36, right to fair hearing. When they say innocent until proven guilty, right? You have a right to a fair trial. He who proposes must prove, right? If you're the one who is taking someone to court, that's why the burden of proof is on the claimant or on the prosecutor, right? So, sometimes when things get on social media and people are like, oh yeah, he's guilty, he's guilty, just by face value. But according to the law, there are different things that you will need to bring to light before you can adequately brand someone as guilty. And that's why you go through this process. And then you realize that when this process is properly done, sometimes the people who you feel that were guilty turned out not to be guilty at all, because again, that's the usefulness of things being laid down, processes and procedures being laid down, so that people do not get unfairly accused or unfairly punished, right? Yeah, so right to personal liberty. Obviously, you can move freely across the nation without anyone unlawfully arresting you and detaining you. But I also want to mention that these rights are not without boundaries. They are not absolute rights. Okay. There's a common saying that your rights stops where another person's own starts, right? So say for instance, okay, fine, you have a right to freedom of movement, but if you then start moving into other people's homes, you have now trespassed, because your right stops at their gate, or probably at that public access, right? So obviously the rights are not absolute. They have their limitations, they have their boundaries. You'd say, okay, yeah, I have a right to assemble, to a peaceful assembly, so I'm going to protest, I'm going to brandish weapons. Obviously, that can be, you have a right to a peaceful assembly. And also, you cannot obstruct public means of transportation where other people are probably having access to go to work and to do other things, right? Right to freedom of expression and the press. Yes, that is true. You can say what you want, but you cannot defame and you cannot say libelous things. If that is proven in court, you obviously be guilty of that offense. There's freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. But when it now comes to you exerting undue influence and using that to perpetrate crime and, sort of abuse people maybe in your care, or people or minors, obviously that's against the law. So just saying in essence that even a right to personal liberty, obviously if you're charged with a crime and you're found guilty, that would cease, because then you would then be remanded in prison or in custody, and that right has definitely been temporarily paused, right? So these rights, even as much as they are available to you, they're not absolute rights, and you should always bear that in mind. And I think it's a healthy practice that before you embark on something, especially when that thing affects other people, just take a little step to understand, okay, what is the process of getting this thing approved, or are there any sort of limitations that I would face in this area or this area, or how do I go about it? That's always a very important thing to do, especially maybe if you're doing something like a protest, right? I mean, people would argue that some people, when they protest, this happened, this happened, this happened, and there are this judicial what would I say, like some cases that were tried and they said, oh, you don't need to get any approval before you protest. But the truth is that the executive arm of government, they have their own functions, right? If for a particular purpose or particular reason they have said, okay, this is what the process should be, I think your goal should be achieving the aim of that protest, not necessarily, okay, let me see how far I can push. That's what I would always advise. Okay, if it's for you to get a sign off from the police, why don't you just do that rather than seeing that, oh, let me see how I can push and see how far this thing will go? Then your priorities are definitely not aligned, because it's either you just want to fight or you actually want to protest for a good cause, and see to it that maybe information is widely spread or people are widely aware of it, right? Yeah, so out of all of these rights that you can see on your screen, is there any one in particular that you want to maybe speak on, or maybe you have a bone to pick, or maybe you have like an experience and you didn't quite understand why you were not able to freely exercise this right? I would like to hear from the class. Anyone? Let me check the chats.
Okay, there is an Adewale Joseph. Oh,
Okay, please go
yes.
ahead. I can't see your chat.
Yeah, I think the network yanked him off.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, so we'll just move on then. So what does it look
There's
like?
something on the chat box.
I don't know.
You can see.
Okay, I can see now. All
Bolaji
right.
Daniels.
Okay, yes. Bolaji, please unmute and let's hear you out.
Okay, I can read his message on the chat box. He said, thank you.
Okay.
I would love you to talk more about the freedom of expression.
Oh, okay. I
And
should talk about it. Freedom of expression. Yes, obviously, we exist in a democratic society. That means that citizens are free to have discussions, even oppose the ruling party, right? Have a healthy form of opposition. That means you can criticize it, you can demand from it, you can make, legal demands on it. However, you can't then start saying libelous things. You can't then start lying or threatening or requesting for an overhaul of the ruling party, right? Or anyone on seats, because obviously that would be some kind of tyranny. And that's not, that's not legal. That's not a legal thing to do, right? But it is actually your right as a citizen to express when you see something being done or a process not be. And I think we actually do that quite well in Nigeria. We actually have those sort of conversations, especially now with social media. There's a lot that goes on, even on the platforms like the Arise TV and TVC. People always express their opinions, and even with like opposing parties, just having a healthy sort of opposition. I think is something that they do so well in the West, right? You said you were going to do this, you said you were going to do this. So people always have those sort of mandates always spelled out. So if there's any form of like not meeting the targets, the opposition would rise and say, oh, criticism and all of that. Obviously, that's healthy to keep a government in check. It's a very healthy practice, and every nation should adopt. It keeps the government in check. It ensures accountability. It ensures transparency. It ensures that people are actually being checked. And that's why we even have the separate arms of government in the first place, to ensure checks and balances, right? So the expression can also come in form of, your legislative, the people that you've elected into the legislative positions. They can even express, during the Senate, during their sessions, they are supposed to act as a voice of the people that, oh, look, this is going on, we would like to move a motion for this. So all of those things are part of expression, right? And in the press as well, the press is seen as the fourth man in government. The press is supposed to have some kind of independence, right? And nowadays, I see a lot of that happening, and it's a very, very welcome development. But obviously, we also need to do it within the confines of the law, nothing extra, nothing extrajudicial where it's like, okay, well, we're clamor. And I think the opposition actually does it in a very healthy manner. Someone says, why is government bringing the idea of hate speech during Buhari administration? Isn't that against the freedom of speech in some sort of way? What's the yardstick for determining hate speech? Interesting, Joseph. Okay, why is government bringing the idea of hate speech during Buhari administration? I would like you to unmute and speak about that, and just throw more light on that statement. What hate speech? Because sometimes I'm not.
I think that person's questions we should take that during the Q&A session.
Okay, during the Q&A. Okay.
We'll probably proceed with your slide.
Okay. Paul Akko said, throw more light on peaceful assembly. It seems this particular right is always suppressed in Nigeria, especially during the military era. Of course, now it will be suppressed during military era because you don't have such freedom. And that's why, as was it Ajibola that said, you now have the right to these things, express freely, to assemble freely, exercise it, because there was a time where you did not have it. In the military era, there was no such thing as freedom of assembly. Once they impose a state of emergency or a curfew, you better be in your house because all your rights are suspended, right? So, Paul, of course, you will not be able to assemble freely during the military era, but now you can. Now you can. Okay, how about treating people unfairly in regions because of their religious beliefs and tribal affiliations? Is it a cultural dominance thing, or can ever go away at any time, or a short eye seal be employed during voiding the constitution, or how it should? Sorry, I'm not really getting it, but I guess you're talking about the tribal, discrimination that goes on and all of those things. Yes, I agree with you, Victor. These things go on and these things happen. And that's why conversations like this are important, because if the people around there were educated enough to know that, look, people are not different. You're not any better than the next person because of who you are or where you're from or your tribe or religion. There is no superiority or there's no one better. It is just a difference in belief system. It's a difference in mindset. It's nothing that you need to use and suppress the other. Then that would really bring about a whole lot of change. I believe most of these things is sort of like I don't know if I should say conditioning, or when people are brought up to think a certain way, right? And they know nothing better. I mean, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but sometimes I have this thought and I'm like, okay, if sometimes education can seem like a slow process, but it is quite effective, because what education does is it gives you a lens to question what you know, what you've known all your life, right? It presents you with a different set of facts and allows you to, you know, logically come to that conclusion for yourself that, you know what, once I was blind, now I can see, right? Okay, I was brought up to think that, okay, this particular region is more superior than the other, but why do I think that way? What are my grounds for such beliefs? What are my you know, why did I arrive at that conclusion? Or is it something I was told? Right? So education sort of expands your mind to other possibilities, right? It gives you the opportunity to question your reality and say, okay, now I'm aware that this is not as I thought it was, right? So I think most of these things, Victor, are as a result of ignorance. And that's why it's important, like we've been saying, it's important to know who you are as a citizen, what's even accrues to you, and what is just, right? What is the right judgment to certain things, right, when it comes to the conversations. But yeah, I mean, I can't tell you exactly why, but I would say that it's a good thing to educate people, have these conversations, pass on this knowledge however you can, because most people that engage in these things, they're largely without that education, without access to adequate information, right? Okay, so I think we can go on. Nwabweze is asking about alcohol sale. What does the Constitution say about alcohol sale? I'm not sure the Constitution talks about alcohol sale. I mean, there are smaller forms of, let me not say smaller, but the Constitution is not the only book of laws, right? The Constitution sort of gives you an overview of governance, structures, election, right? Who can be voted into power, how they can be voted into power. Then as you cascade down, you then have regulations, you then have maybe the Consumer Protection Act, you have the SON, you have other forms of body of laws that address these things directly, right? So those specific conversations are not in the Constitution. I mean, you were asking about alcohol. I believe you would want to maybe visit what book now would I recommend for you? But I don't know that. Yes, of course, in some states, because some states are governed by, some states have their own book of laws, right? So there's some states are still under the Sharia law. So obviously, how they operate would be in line with the Sharia law. And then with our system of government, there's some legislations that are not exclusive to the federal government. Some is shared, they are concurrent. So both the state and the federal government can legislate on it, and some the state alone can legislate on it, right? So things like this obviously would be within the jurisdiction of that state, right? Depending on the system and the structure of the state, obviously the body of laws would follow, right? So that's why you see things like, for instance, the Child Rights Act was ratified in Nigeria, but some states sort of were slow in adoption, right? So if it's not adopted in that state, because when it comes to children or the rights of a child or anything that has to do with a child, it is not, is it exclusive list or concurrent list or residual list? Concurrent list is the one that both the state and the federal would share. But then for the rights of a child, the state has jurisdiction. So the state would need to ratify it into its body of laws before they can rightfully implement it within their judicial system. Okay. right now the police will ask that you inform them or get clearance for peaceful protest. How is that supposed to aid freedom of assembly and freedom of speech in a democracy? I knew of names such as Gani Fayemi, Tai Solarin, Frank Kokori during the military because they were vocal in criticism of the military back then. Rotimi, yes. Yes, obviously these people were, again, if you have a military system of government is not a system of government that, for lack of a better word, it's not a system of government that you would like. It's not favorable to the common man. So obviously there will be voices that will obviously stand against it. There were even a lot more that you mentioned. There were a lot more people that spoke against the system of government because it was oppressive. People's rights were limited. People were not able to speak freely. People could not move around freely. So obviously, yes, people rose up and spoke against it, right? Oh gosh, my screen has stopped sharing again. Okay, so people rose up and spoke against it for good reason. Even now, right? Now, people still comment, criticize the government, and rightfully so. If it's something that's okay, you said right now the police will ask that you inform them or get clearance. So, like I was saying, that happens. I personally would say, okay, the constitution did not say, the constitution gives you the right to assemble if you want to, right? But my own point is the police is the executive arm, right? They are the executive arm of government, and they have their own reason for existing. If the police says, okay, we can perceive that this protest has a tendency to become irate or to take a different turn, we would like to know or just have some kind of prior notice so that perhaps, I mean, some people will argue that, yeah, that's not why they're asking you to come and get clearance. But what I'm saying is, if your aim for a protest is to get people aware of a situation or to throw more light or to bring more awareness or to create, a wide or a nationwide or a community-wide sort of prioritization of an issue, and you are required to get a clearance, is that so much to ask for? Is a question. Is that so much to ask for? If you're required to, okay, come get it, just keep us informed. Okay, we are cleared on this. We have agreed to control ourselves to not use any crazy weapons or armed weapons. We will stick to this particular route. Personally, I don't know that that's such a hard ask, right? Because mind you, the police also has its own role to play in terms of protecting the citizens and ensuring that, a protest does not go beyond what it's supposed to, it starts vandalizing properties and then it becomes something else, right? I'm just saying, if your aim is to create awareness, perhaps if that's just a little inconvenience, what's wrong with that? Except it's now like, okay, I went to get the clearance and they said I shouldn't get the clearance. I can't get the clearance, or I need to pay to get the clearance. Then that's where we can then have the conversation of, okay, why are we having to do all of those things or jump through all of those loops when we have that right to peacefully assemble? And you can raise an alarm and speak on it. Okay, let's go on and we will address some of these questions at the end of the class. All right, so in practice, what does civic rights look like? It looks like the right to access public services, healthcare, education, the right to petition the government, obviously, write letters, protest, assemble. You can form organizations, you can register organizations freely, you can move freely, you can go from one state to another, you can own property from in one state or another. You can, so that's what that right looks like. Civic right also looks like, the fact that when when you are charged with a crime, you are not immediately sentenced, right? You go through the process of pleading your case, bringing the witnesses, the accused and the prosecutor will go at it, and then the judge will adjudicate on it. That's what it looks like. It also looks like, freedom of expression. Some people are very good at writing. You write blog posts, you go on podcasts, you have these conversations, and you speak freely, and no one stops you, no one, comes against you. That's what it looks like. Political rights, what do they look like? Like the right to vote and be voted for. There's no barrier to you being able to vote. Ideally, there shouldn't be. And, if you're able to go through the process or the procedures that are required for you to be voted for, with the parties, be a part of political party, have all the requirements checked, you should be able to be to participate in that process. Freedom of political association, like I mentioned, you're free to join any political party as many as we have. You also have the right to run for public office, electoral participation through debates and town hall. So all of these are expressions of our civic and political rights. And yes, I don't know if anyone has a question on that. Now, how are these rights violated in Nigeria? I mean, we all know the common ones. The one that we recently went through, police brutality, violation of freedom and dignity, voter suppression. A lot was said about previous elections, violence, rigging. These are means and ways that these rights are violated. We can all attest to that. No, I don't know. I mean, if you don't think, in fact, let people ask, do you think that these rights are violated? Before I even start mentioning. Or does anyone feel like these rights are freely accessible and without violation? Because I always like to hear the unicorns out. Someone might just be living the Nigerian dream, and we need to hear from them. Okay, Rosimi said hugely gross violations. Okay, so we're all on the same page. I mean, I'd like to hear anyone who thinks, you know what, we're all not seeing things the same. And I believe that there is a reason for the violation, and it is absolutely proper for it to be violated. Ernest, bail is not free as written. My brother has a different conversation. Odofin, please go ahead.
Okay. Hello.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much, man. Yes. To be very frank, when we say if our rights or my right is actually being violated as a citizen of Nigeria, I can 100% say yes. Now, when it comes to right to freedom of information, one, if you look from that aspect, we don't have the freedom to express ourselves even by protest, because when you do that, one, you will be arrested for doing that. That is number one, especially when you protest against what the government would want them to be in place for them. When it comes to, for instance, pension in Nigeria, as people of Nigerians, a lot of people are not comfortable with what is happening, even in the pension aspect, even scheme. When it comes to security aspect, again, we are not given the right to express ourselves, even when you are actually being killed. So in so many diverse ways, our rights are actually being trampled upon. Thank you, ma'am.
Can I go ahead to unmute the next person?
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. Thank you very much, Odofin. Yes, please unmute the next person. That's Ambassador Stanley.
Thank you very much for your lecture. I want to deviate a bit, if you don't mind. And
Please go ahead.
basically is on this justiciable and non-justiciable rights of citizens. I guess we all know why some of those rights, right to education, for example, is not something I can go to court and sue the government because nobody wants to get, nobody in power wants to be fried, if you know what I mean. But my question then is, what can we do as a people, as a community, to ensure that these rights become, justiciable? For example, in more civilized climes, you have a right to health. You have a right to education. You can take the government to court and win. So enough of too much. These are basic for me. These are even the basic rights. Expression, yes, but what can we do as citizens? The Constitution review is on now, for example. What can we do to ensure that this right to education, right to good health are justiciable? Thank you very much. Did you hear me, ma'am?
Yes, I heard you.
Okay, ma'am.
Yes, I heard you. Thank you very much, Ambassador Stanley. Anyone else? I'll just take the last person and then we can discuss. Ota Nelson or Oluwatosin.
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute Paul.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
All right. The question, if our rights are being violated in Nigeria, is something that...
Yes, I can hear you.
Sorry. Yes, if our rights are being violated in Nigeria, I will say not a yes or a no. But if I should stand clear, I will say that no, our rights are not being violated. Why?
Okay.
The rights exist. When an average Nigerian is offended, for instance, if you ask him or her, let's take up this issue, they usually have constraint, either financially or they don't want to come public with it. We've seen it happen severally. So the right exists, and you felt that something has gone wrong, and you say, okay, let's approach the court, let's get remedy, let's have this done. Sometimes people will tell them, hey, going to court is not the solution. The court will not grant you your reliefs or what you have. So the person renege, like they go back to their shell, and it keeps happening. So if your right is being violated, who is violating the right is what I will ask. Have you asked? Yes, human interaction, there's usually this setback between us, but there's also this third party who is the umpire that will now come and decide what it is. But you say, no, let us not go there because of reasons personal to you. And at the end of the day, you are screaming wolf. Okay, there is a protest and the police stepped in and took an action. The group will not say, okay, let us go to court and seek remedy against these persons to restrain them, to have a court order or what have you. Like you see Sarah most often speak for Nigerians, and the court gives ruling in as much as it's not being enforced, but at least steps are being taken. So if you claim your right is being violated, who is violating it? Are you seeking remedy according to what is protected by law? So to a large extent, I feel that our rights are not being violated. It is there, and it is us that constrain ourselves from getting our rights being enforced properly. Thank you so very much.
Okay, thank you. Was that Ata Nelson? I'm not sure who was speaking. Well, thank you for that point. And that's what I was looking for, actually. I was looking for someone with a dissenting voice, and I think I got it.
Nelson, actually. Nelson.
Okay, Nelson. Okay, thank you for that. So I've heard all of you, and to be fair, everyone's opinion and everyone's thoughts and expression is valid. Why? Because I can't tell you your experience of Nigeria. You alone know what it is that you have seen and heard and the path that you have walked, and it's very valid to you. But what I would say is this: a lot of the time, right, we do this thing where we like to compare ourselves to the West and say, oh, look how they're doing it so well there, they've gotten it all figured out. You will be very surprised that this West that you're looking at, they have the highest rate of right violation, right, and magu that you've ever seen. Now, this small Nigeria that we are still, we're still looking at with one eye. When it comes to and again, where Nigeria is in terms of the number of years that we have existed as an independent country, if you compare that to where some of these countries that we're looking at and saying, okay, they're doing it so well, Asia and all these places, you can't compare how far we've come. Yes, we still have a long way to go, but Nigeria is not a total write-off as we like to claim all the time, that, okay, well, we're not doing anything right. There's so much oppression, there's so much all of these things. But the fact that you can even have these conversations is a testament that you exist in a democratic society. The fact that we can even have these sort of conversations, these sort of classes, these sort of things, and, it's nothing that we're hiding to do, it's nothing illegal about it. It's a testament to the democracy that was fought for and gotten. Right? Granted, it is true that a lot of times there is violation. There is absolutely very clear violation of rights, but they are instances where people, just like the last speaker said, people have sought for redress and have gotten it through legal means. People have gone through that painstaking process. They have walked through that path and they have gotten case in point. And let me not even go as far as, a huge fundamental human right being infringed. Something as simple as an airline canceling your flight without any form of redress. Do you know that they're actually supposed to compensate you? Do you know that it is your right that to get under the aviation law, they should compensate you? But people come online, peace, whoever. They did this, they did that, and that's the end. We just complain and then we walk away. But you've failed to actually seek out, okay, wait, I paid for my airline, I paid for a flight, and you unilaterally reneged on, because that's a contract, right? That's an implied contract. There was an offer, and I stepped into that offer, I accepted it, there was even compensation, and then you reneged on it unilaterally without counsel, and I suffered some damages, but nobody really takes time to go through that process of, okay, let me actually see what my rights, and let me even start the process of writing that letter to whoever it is I need to write to, or even sending a notice, a properly redrafted email, even telling them that, look, sometimes you don't even need to even get to any court, because once you make that statement and assert your right, and it's like, this person knows who they are and what they are, and they know that if this thing even gets to wherever it gets to, they will pay times 10 of that. So sometimes some of these small instances of things, I mean, someone said these are basic rights. You'll be surprised, it's basic, but it goes to the very core of your citizenry as a Nigerian. Right to vote, right to speak freely. Some people don't know. You want to set up a podcast, or even have like a small communal gathering in your neighborhood, and someone is telling you, oh no, you can't do that, and then you just, okay, and then you close it up. But if you know your rights, you should know that you should freely be able to participate in these things. You should freely be able to assemble in that way, and who knows, it's a ripple effect. You have those conversations, it's carried on to a different circle, and it gets to the right people who, with a change of mind, they're able to effect a change within their systems. So you can't look down on conversations that, I know it seems like it's primary, we're just talking about normal rights. Yes, it is primary, but the primary thing is what you need to know, and know at the back of your hand, right? It's just like when people talk about sorry, I'm talking about Christians now. When they say the gospel is simple, it's simple, but it's that simple thing that's that simple truth that you need to know, because it's upon it that you can then build your foundations on, right? You can't discard this very basic right, the knowledge of this very basic right, and how you can access them and how you can use it to your own advantage. Yes, it gets violated, but your power is in your awareness, is in your voice as a nation, is in your ability to write, in your ability to have conversations, in your ability to document. We forget, you need to document. If you get your right violated, you document it. It's not hearsay, because at the end of the day, it's going to be your word against theirs. Your word against theirs. Where I currently work, two staff, they were going at it, and I said, what happened? Okay, show me the email. Where's the email trail? They say, he said this, he said that. Where is the email trail? Because when it gets to an area of it being justiciable, you should be able to have your facts and your evidence. So have a practice of documenting any sort of violation. Document it, get whatever needs to be gotten, get like evidences, if it's a proof of transaction or an approval that was gotten. All of those things, they come in handy, because again, when you need to sort of talk about it or get people on your side, it needs to be factual. People talk about having receipts. It's very important. Document violations, have your receipts, because even that court that you're going to is not just they want to hear, right? They want to actually have factual evidences. So whatever it is, just have a practice of documenting and communicate to other people as well. Have a practice of documenting violation. It may seem as though, okay, you can't get any form of redress, but you can actually, and people have done and gotten it, but the process of it is what people don't, the inconvenience of the process is what people are not interested in. I know some people might want to admit and say, yes, I know someone who did, and then they said she should bring money and all of these things, right? And then they gave up. Court is not always the only way. There are multi-door courts. I mean, in a place like Lagos State, we have the multi-door courts system that the judgment is binding on the parties. You can take it back to the judge and say, okay, you know what, we agreed on this thing, and we would want it to be binding on us, and the judge will take it as judgment on it. And those other means, they're not as expensive, they're not as time consuming, right? It's just that desire to seek for a proper conclusion to matters that we lack, as that resilience of going through the process. We hear all the stories online and we'll suddenly just give up, but that's not who we are as a people. We know that us as Nigerians, we are quite resilient people. But when it comes to like legal matters like this, civic and political matters, we give up too easily. We like hearsay, we like the fanfare. But this is work. Going through a class like this is the work. Reading it up, doing the work of writing those letters, writing it over and over again, sending those letters to the consumer protection, sending it to the aviation authority, sending it to the local government, writing and over until you get it done. Right? I'm not discounting the fact that, yes, sometimes there are bottlenecks. It is hard, it is this, but have you even started? Have you even gone through any of those processes before? And just to say, oh, let me even see what is available to me. That would be my response to it. But yes, the rights are violated. I agree. But sometimes we might just need to go through that process or even start it, so that we can then definitely say that, oh, yes, I did this. Oh, this did not work. Maybe try this. Not to just say, oh, the system is corrupt, let's just go home. And that's what the ruling class wants you to believe, because when you leave it for them, they will of course enjoy it, because you're not exerting any form of ownership on what's available to you. Right. Okay, so I think that's about it, really. How to protect and enforce your rights. Okay, so can we then move on to ways at which you think that you can protect and enforce your rights? Anybody, please.
Hello. Hello, good evening. Hello, good
Go ahead,
evening.
we can
Yes, please go
hear you.
ahead.
Sorry, your question again. Sorry. Okay.
How do you protect and enforce your rights as a citizen in Nigeria?
By seeking redress in court when there are issues that borders around your fundamental human rights, you go to the court to enforce your right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Daniel.
Yeah, good evening and thank you very much. In order to obtain redress or to enforce your rights, you must advocate for it. You must stand for it. Practically, you need to present yourself for the redress either through cool, low-key advocacy for your own rights, or you take it to the streets, you take it hot. You go through legal means, of course, nothing illegal. You document, and you reach out to the appropriate authorities or whoever is infringing on your rights for a redress. The more people stand up, we might obtain a critical mass that will cause a systematic shift, a seismic shift. So personally, which I've done severally, when your rights are infringed, you must articulate how it was infringed and on what basis it was infringed. The basis of what law was it infringed? Is it like a rule book or a guidebook? So that when you are talking, you'll be talking logically. And what redress exactly you are seeking, one has to be very specific and limited in what you seek for in terms of redress, and also so that your rights will not be trampled upon going further. And sometimes you might even become a, do I call it, you'll now become the benchmark. Your head will now be where the abuse of rights stops, because certain rules will now be enacted in line with that. So, as I said, just you reach out and present your issues forcefully. Thank you very much.
I love that. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you. And sometimes I like that, Daniel. Sometimes we fail to recognize that most times these things are being fought for. It's not necessarily ideal, but you need to understand systems of societies. Sometimes you may just have to be inconvenienced over and over again to set a standard. And like what you mentioned, there's something we call precedent in law. Once that thing has gone into record, others can then quote you. And that is a very big, step in light of justice and in light of the development of laws. It's a very big step if, because of you, something, takes a different turn, law takes a different turn. Is a really huge step. So again, the process may not always be as seamless and as straightforward as we desire it to be, but that's probably the price to pay for these things, right? And people who do it, they know what they go through to get it done. But once it is documented and that process is started, is usually a very commendable thing. So like you mentioned, yes, definitely document it, take record of it, and go through the legal means and talk about it, create awareness, have those conversations, continue to talk about it, continue to, there are so many instances I can cite, even now ongoing, where people have clearly been maligned, been misrepresented, and they do not fail to have those conversations. They go on platforms, they go on their social media. Nowadays, social media is free for all, so people can, even international bodies can easily pick up your conversation. But like the first speaker said, always go through a legal means. Nothing illegal, nothing libelous. If not, you will catch a case for yourself. So yeah, how to demand your rights, report violations. You can report to court, human rights organizations. In the last class, someone had mentioned that you didn't think that one of these commissions are functional, right? But I'm saying, have you even researched on them? Have you even tried or made an attempt to write to them, or it's just hearsay, right? Because I know people who have actually gone through this process and they have gotten results. But it's just that thing where we're just like, no, nothing works in Nigeria. There's nobody, nothing is going on there. I know people who have actually painstakingly written, even if it's not that first letter they respond to, but they've been persistent in their quest for justice, right? And then participate in elections to vote for good leaders. You can never not be involved, because if you renege in participating, whatever you see, you collect it like that. You always have to participate in elections to vote, and participate after you have voted, right? Still continue the conversation, still hold your leaders accountable, still find ways to get information across, still lobby, still interact with them, still hold that fire to them, like, look, you said you were going to do this, why are you not doing it, right? Hold leaders accountable through petitions, protest, and activism. These are the ways that you can protect your rights. Legal avenues for redress. You have the courts as always, and then you engage your lawyers, legal service, and just even educate yourself. Educate yourself. Continue the conversations. You see it being done to someone else. Lend your voice. A lot of us are really good writers. Write to your leaders, write to the people that you have elected, and follow due process as always, and educate others to be able to do the same. Like I said, these things do not always come easy. They're not always straightforward, but I would always advise people to take that step of starting that letter, starting the conversation, even knowing what the process is, even being aware of what the process is, and then starting that process. It may actually hit a roadblock, but then you would know what not to do, and obviously take a different turn. But I do believe that the first step always is to have that education, inform yourself, keep yourself and your community and your people and circles informed. So even when we're having conversations, we're not just arguing amiss and just having, just saying things. At least what you're saying, it's informed, it's accurate, right? So that we are productive as a nation. So just a couple of examples of things that we've done and ways that we've attempted to enforce our rights. EndSARS process, a lot of people say, oh yeah, it was failed, But I don't think it was failed. I think it was one of the most pivotal moments in time for us as a nation, as Nigerians. That was a time where it felt like, okay, so the youth, they're not actually just sleeping. They are aware of what's going on. And this government, they now know that the youths are aware, right? And that's saying something. That's saying something that, you know what, it's not just business as usual. People can actually rise up. And people have seen that there's an extent that this thing can get to, right? And in my books, that's a success. It may not have yielded the result that everyone, thought it would, but there was a lot of international attention. There was a lot of conversations that started and still continues up until today. Even some electoral reforms have come out of that. A lot of things have, been reformed. A lot of new regulations have come out of that. A lot of even organizations, a lot of people's interests have been piqued. A lot of participation has also been gotten from that when it comes to politics as well. Press freedom cases as well. A lot of journalists challenging the government censorship. I mean, I think there was a time that Twitter was, there was a pause on Twitter, and there was a whole lot of protests, and that was taken off, you know. So you might think that what you're doing is not helpful, but it is. May not be at the pace that you want it, but that's why it's a legal process. A legal process usually is a bit slow, but it's slow because it's reformative. You're going to start from the foundation to change a process, then it has to start slow. If not, you will end up creating chaos where you intended to create peace. Okay, so just rounding up, I don't know, I think we've already addressed most of these questions actually. What rights do you think? I think these are just like thoughts that you should go home with, things that you should just deliberate on, the rights that you think are most violated, and what you can do to defend your civic rights and political rights where you are currently. Maybe in Kano, maybe in Lagos, maybe in Abuja. What do you think you can do as a young person, as a youth, as a father, as a teacher, as a civil servant? What can you do to defend the rights of the people that you work with? You know, what actionable things you think you can do to defend those rights? Right. And how can you hold your leaders accountable beyond elections? What role do you think you can play to hold your leaders accountable after elections? Very important. After elections, what role do you think you can play? And how do you think you can start to be a change driver in your small community and space? You don't necessarily need to answer. It's just thoughts that you can go back home with. But thank you, everyone. That's the end of my class. Thank you. Over to you, Lisa, or anyone.
Thank you, Barrister. Thank you for the insightful class, and thank you for living up to facilitating of being a constitutional lawyer, and it's quite insightful. Thank you as always. And I think at this point we would move to the question and answer. And please, Barrister, do you have a preference of the number of questions we can take so as to manage your time?
I mean, you can ask the questions. I think I have like 5 minutes can spare. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Patrick, kindly unmute and ask your question. Thank you.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, good evening. I must thank our facilitator for the lecture this evening. It's indeed an eye-opener to so many issues, but there are quite a number of issues that I would have loved to get her thought on. And let me just put you that I have 3 questions here. The first one is this. It's related to one of the posers she left us with concerning the rights being violated most. And to me, I would say it is the right to life. Right to life, because look at how widespread there is insecurity in Nigeria. Almost every part of this country, people cannot freely move from one point or the other, you know. And then when you look very well, you discover that in the Constitution, the primary responsibility of government, stated clearly in black and white, is that what? That the primary responsibility of government is protection of lives and property. And in this area, looking at the number of people that are being killed on a daily basis and the numbers, one is persuaded to feel that the government has failed completely and totally in its primary responsibility. And now the option is this. People now come up with the issue of self-defense. And then there's this argument, whether self-defense is a right or it's not a right. It's one of the questions I would want our facilitator to talk about. This issue of self-defense. Government is failing to protect the people. Then what about self-defense? Do the people have the right this time around to protect themselves in the event of a complete failure of government to protect them? Self-defense, one. Secondly, look around the federation. You go to some states, you see internally displaced persons living in very, very dehumanizing conditions. No food to eat, no water, no nothing. Some of them in the cold, in the rain, under the sun. They don't even have roof over their heads. If it's raining, rain is on them. and all that. So what I'm trying to say that and this is a lot of insecurity. They cannot access their homes because their homes have been taken over by terrorists and bandits. So now the question is the right of these people being violated since they cannot go to their various homes and they cannot go to their farms. That is two. And then lastly, the facilitator said that, made a comment and said Nigeria is not a write-off. I want to ask her this question, that going by the conditions certain Nigerians are facing, they can't afford food, they can't afford medical care, they can't afford education, their rights are being violated by government, they cannot, no security, they can't go to their farms, they don't just know where the next meal will come from. Does she think that this set of Nigerians will agree with her that Nigeria is not a write-off? Thank you.
Okay, I'll just take that question because that has already gone into the rest of the time. Okay, so Mr. Aka Patrick, you said quite a bunch of things. And honestly, some of these things that you said, I understand that it's the reality of a lot of us as Nigerians, is what we see every day, is what we, in fact, I'm sure that you're aware of the issue in the north where the farmer had to defend himself, right? And even with that, he was charged to court and is currently awaiting execution, right? So these are actually like live issues. It's not something that is being made up, right? And the insecurity thing is an absolute truth. I'm not going to stay here and say, go to court and whatever. You are right. You are absolutely right. But what I would say is this: what other choice do you have, Mr. Aka Patrick? What other choice do you have? What exactly do you want to do? Do you want to go to another country? Do you want to take up citizenship in another country? What other choice do you have than to look inward and see what is available to you? I stand by my word. Nigeria is not a write-off. Because you are saying, okay, in comparison to what? In comparison to where that you are writing it off, as in what yardstick are you using to measure it? Is it a Rwanda that went through genocide, or in fact any African country at that have gone through and continue to go through these things? It's yes, I agree. The pot is hotter when you are the one on the fire. But if you actually do a deep dive into various other governments and societal structures, it's pretty much the same thing. It's pretty much, if not even worse, right? Granted, others have come out of it after years and years of trial and error. But you still have the responsibility. And that's why we have this class. It's not saying, okay, we're not going to nominate Ambassador Stanley or Joseph Adewale to go and meet the president. Obviously, you can't do that at this stage. But what can you do now, right now, where you are? What actions can you take where you are? I'm not here to tell you that, okay, this is the expo, this is the short answer of how we can make our lives better or secure our lives or do all of these things. But what can you do? You can, first of all, even educate yourself first to even know, okay, what's available to me? Where do I stand? How do I even proceed? That's even legal, that I will not make an action and then I'm being remanded. How can I even proceed as a person? What can I do with what I have in my little corner? And that's why we are having these conversations. It's not to say, oh, to keep speaking doom and gloom and saying, oh, okay, we don't have any, there's no opportunity. Okay, it's insecure. Yes, it goes without saying. It's rhetorical. It goes without saying. Yes, I know. And I absolutely understand. Even when, with the whole election thing, most people had stories to tell. but there's still actionable things that you can do. It may not even be something that once you do, you would see that result immediately. And that might also even go to the sense of, for lack of a better word, selfishness that we have as a people, where it's like, oh, if it's not beneficial to me and myself, I will have nothing to do with it until it reaches my neighbor, until it reaches my family, before I lend my voice, before I participate, before I say anything. Should be my own, we are secure. But you will realize that what is done to someone in Benue or in Kano is so far away, it's actually done to you as well. Injustice to one is injustice to all. So what I said is, you lend your voice. Okay, you've seen that reporting something to a particular body is not as effective. What other things are available to me? I can speak about it. I can have conversations. I can continue to speak about it to draw attention from whoever needs or is able to effect that change. From the people that are elected, if we were all on the same page about keeping our leaders accountable, Mr. Akapatrick, if we were all on the same page on keeping our leaders accountable, we will go a lot further than where we are. Because first of all, the people who were meant to make the laws and effect the change would at least know that, look, people are uncomfortable and they will come for my head. If we're all on the same page, if it's just, okay, you're the only one that is speaking about it amongst millions of people in your community, what sense does that make? You can't effect that change by yourself. I can't effect it by myself. What can I do? I can come on a forum like this and educate people on what I know, what I have seen people do, and it has worked for them. May not work all the time, but I've seen it work. So I would encourage that, right? And when the opportunities come to actually effect this change, we should not be found wanting. You cannot be found, you don't have the luxury to stay in your house and say, oh, the one when I went to vote, you don't have the luxury, because now you know that is literally on your streets now. It's literally in your village. So okay, so if you leave it for me, when the government comes, it's me and you that will go through it now. There's a particular, anyway, let me not go too far on that. But what I'm saying is, at the end of the day, it is still what is available to you that you will do. You asking me these questions, I'm also wondering what kind of response would you want me to say outside of what I've already told you? We can beat about the bush and go over these things over and over again, but the answers are still what the answers are. Continue to create awareness, educate yourself, have those conversations, avail yourself when it is time, and don't wait until it happens to you or someone you know. Even if it is someone that you've never even thought of, or you know that your paths will never cross, be as loud, be as effective, be as involved, because you know that this is the only country that we have, except you have plans to take up citizenship anywhere. But essentially, this is the only country that you will have first rights to anything as much as you would. No matter, even if you take citizenship anywhere else, this is still the country that you will have the kind of rights and the kind of rights are accrued to you as you have right now. And that's the truth. No matter how much it is that you pay another country, you will still be considered as. So that's it. That's my response. It is still, what can you do where you are? We're not all going to march to, we can't do that. We'll be charged for disruption and unrest and causing being miscreants. But there are things that you can do, and it seems little, it seems inconsequential, but that's how change starts. And when you see someone who seems like they have some kind of traction, and they're doing it in a legal way, in a proper way, they have accountability, they are transparent, then you back them up. That's it. It's as easy as that. I mean, it's as straightforward as that. I personally, that's what I would say. I mean, Other facilitators can come and give you other things, but in my own world, that's, as a lawyer and all of this, is I will always tell you to do things through the legal way. And the first way to do things through the legal way is even to understand what the legal way is. Yeah. Well, I'm so sorry. I have to leave. But it has been a very interesting class. And I'll just encourage every one of you to continue with, I mean, I can see that there's a lot of hunger, there's a lot of drive, there's a lot of fire, right? Continue in that way, but don't be discouraged. Don't always seek out the way out. Always seek out the answers to the questions. Don't just have questions and be frustrated with. Seek, okay, so what can I do? How can I play a role? How can I effect that change? How can I get my leg into the doors of power where I can actively influence these decisions? You may start it and another can come and complete it, but at least make a step. And that's the selflessness of it, where you're like, you know what, this Nigeria, it will be better. Maybe not in my time, truthfully, excuse me, maybe not in my time, but eventually it will be, if we make these little drops of changes. Thank you. Sorry, guys. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And I think you're closing on the note of provoking everybody's inquisitiveness when it comes to Nigerian Constitution. So would implore each and every one of us to delve into it more, understand our rights as citizens, our civic powers, as against the myths around nothing works, this is going to work against me. So it's better to learn the rules before you can trigger the advantages of the rules. Thank you so much for that insightful class. And guys, can you please all unmute and say thank you to our facilitator, and do have a nice rest of your weekend and a lovely week ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, man.
Thank you very much, man.
Thank you very much for this. I
Thank you very
appreciate
much,
it.
man. We're grateful very much, man.
Thank you very much
For your time.
for an insightful.
Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you very much for
Thank you very
insightful
much,
class.
man.
We appreciate
Thank you very much for today's
I
class.
do pay.
Thank you so much on behalf of the college. You're a part of us, so thank you for always being available. It's been such an insightful class. For the cohorts, please remember that your campaigns are on Tuesday, and then debates Wednesday, and the elections Thursday. So take note of that. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely weekend.